Today, Social Democrat Olaf Scholz took the reins of power from Angela Merkel, took the oath of office, and took his place in a new political chapter in Europe's largest democracy. The transfer of power was modest but meaningful. There was little ceremonial pomp and circumstance on offer today. Instead, a generous showing of loyalty to the country's basic law. Now, this is the moment that Angela Merkel officially handed over power to her successor, leaving the political stage after 16 years in power and 31 years in politics. The official ceremony inside the Chancellery here in Berlin included speeches from the former and current chancellors. Let's have a listen.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch.
Congratulations, dear Chancellor, dear Olaf Scholz. I know from my own experience that it is a moving occasion to be elected to this office. As you perhaps can imagine, it is an exciting, fulfilling job and a demanding one. But if you approach it with enthusiasm, then it's perhaps one of the most beautiful jobs there is, to bear responsibility for this country. I sincerely wish you good luck and every success for our country.
I think it's something very special to be Federal Chancellor of this Republic. It's a great challenge. I'm very grateful that the citizens of this country and the German Bundestag have given me the mandate to do this. The fact that you and I were able to share so many experiences together will help me fulfill my role. Thank you again for the work you've done.
And to discuss this historic day here in Germany, I'm joined tonight by Jessica Berlin. Jessica is a German-American political analyst and commentator. She's a familiar face to our viewers. Jessica, it's good to have you back on the program. Before we talk about the new chancellor and the new former chancellor, I'd like to focus on what we saw today. Angela Merkel transferring power to Olaf Scholz after 16 years at the top of government. Talk to me about the significance of what we witnessed today.
This is truly a historic day for all of us here in Germany. It's the end of an era, and for an entire generation of Germans, they're facing something completely new. Anyone who was born in the last 20 years in Germany and across the world has only known Angela Merkel as the German chancellor. So for them, it will be a new experience, but also for all Germans, we're starting a new era with the first ever three-party coalition in Germany's history. So this is truly a historic day. It was hard not to have goosebumps watching the peaceful transition, honestly.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, we know that Germany has huge challenges, but its politics are not as polarized as those that we see in the United States. And after what we saw following last year's presidential election, culminating in the January 6th riot at the Capitol, and when you add to that members of the U.S. Congress openly embracing subtle and not so subtle calls for violence against other members of Congress, when you consider all of that, is there a message that can be sent from Berlin to Washington tonight?
Absolutely. What we saw today was a clear reminder and message, not only to Washington, but to the world, that the peaceful democratic transfer of power is something sacred. It's something that calls for humility and respect. And in no country, more so than Germany, do we understand this. Our ancestors, and even our living ancestors, have fought and died for Germans to have the right for this peaceful transfer of power, as well as the ancestors of all Americans. And today, millions of people around the world continue to fight and indeed to die for their right to peaceful democratic governance. So this message from Germany to Washington, I hope, is received loud and clear. There is another way, and we have to protect and respect the sacredness of our peaceful democratic transitions.
Yeah, it shows just how precious this peaceful transfer of power really is. Let's focus now on the new Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, the new leader of Germany, whom the world will soon get to know. Here's more.
The 63-year-old former mayor of Hamburg is seen as a pragmatist, an effective operator in times of crisis. As finance minister, Scholz set aside his reputation for caution during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic and massively increased public borrowing to prop up the economy. It gave his popularity a significant boost. Following the election, he secured a coalition agreement to govern with the Greens and the Free Democrats. A combination that's never been tried before, but that Scholz says has big potential. We are not about lowest common denominator politics, but about high impact politics. We want to dare to do something about climate change, the restructuring of our industry, the modernization of the country, the strengthening of social cohesion. We dare to make more progress. Bold goals in the face of immediate challenges, with Germany tackling its worst COVID-19 surge yet and Europe grappling with the fallout from Brexit and a crisis on the EU's border with Belarus. Olaf Scholz will soon have to prove whether he can deliver leadership in times of crisis as Chancellor too.
Jessica, the most important question for our international viewers, how different will German foreign policy be under Olaf Scholz compared to what we have known under Angela Merkel?
Well, that's really the million-dollar question. Olaf Scholz has made clear that he's striving for continuity with the last administration's foreign policy. This, of course, makes sense coming from Scholz. He himself was vice chancellor in the past government and also finance minister. So for him, staying the course makes sense. However, the incoming Green Party has taken over the foreign ministry now under Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, and she has made clear that she wants to take a harder stance against human rights abusers and stand up more for human rights protection and democratic values in the world. So it remains to be seen who really gets to be in the driving seat between the Chancellery and the Foreign Ministry when these issues arise, as they are sure to do in the coming months and in the coming year.
And I think we can say tonight for the transatlantic community, Chancellor Scholz, he looks like an early Christmas present, doesn't he?
An early Christmas present. Well, we'll see if that is the case for the full transatlantic community. But one thing is clear: he's certainly an early Christmas present for outgoing Chancellor Merkel, who will be very happy that the transition was completed before the holidays, so she can get a well-deserved rest and enjoy the break.
Yeah, that's true. If anyone deserves a present, it is Angela Merkel this Christmas. There are two foreign policy flashpoints I'd like to discuss with you. The first being the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline that links Russia to Germany. Merkel, as we know, she defended this project to the end of her career. What will Chancellor Scholz do, especially if it looks like a Russian invasion of Ukraine is imminent?
It's a very difficult question. Honestly, Olaf Scholz thus far has refused to answer the question clearly. He, even this evening earlier on a German public broadcaster interview, said that there would be consequences if Russia invaded Ukraine, but hedged on the answer of what those consequences might be. And this is a difficult position for him because his party, of course, has been traditionally quite close to Russia and pushed for closer ties, conciliatory ties with Russia over the years. However, the EU, the Green Party with which he is now ruling, and the United States are clearly against Nord Stream 2. And so if Russia should in fact invade Ukraine or take any other aggressive measures against allies of NATO, of Germany, he will be increasingly isolated in his position that Nord Stream 2 should go forward and Russia should continue to be placated.
Yeah, and Olaf Scholz cannot say that he is the Vladimir Putin whisperer the way Angela Merkel could say, right?
Certainly not. And his party is also known, as I mentioned, for being close to Putin. Former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, also of the SPD, is even sitting in the board of Gazprom. So these issues make it very difficult for Scholz to continue a overtly pro-Russia stance if Russia should begin to push boundaries. Second
flashpoint, China. Where will Germany stand in a world that is increasingly taking sides between what looks like a U.S.-led camp and a Chinese-led camp?
Germany will definitely try to diffuse any sense of a bipolar world power situation arising. It's in nobody's interest for a return to a Cold War-style polarization. Really, the key question will be, will German foreign policy start to put its money where its mouth is on human rights? For years, of course, the German government has spoken out openly in support of human rights in China, in particular around Hong Kong and Xinjiang, the repression and internment of Uyghur citizens of China. But at the end of the day, those words were not converted into action and serious economic, political consequences for China. Annalena Baerbock, the new foreign minister, will be pushing for that to happen, but it remains to be seen if those words will be backed up with action. Furthermore, the main thing that Germany can do is also reach out to other Asian powers, rising smaller Asian powers in Eastern and Southeast Asia, and critically in Latin America and Africa as well, and create a global alliance of aspiring democracies or emerging economies where it's in our common interest to maintain global stability. And this hopefully can be the role Germany plays in keeping a geopolitical balance.
Do you see a German diplomatic boycott of the Olympics in China?
That would be, for German standards, a very radical step. I would be surprised to see it at this point. I think there would have to be a change in the status quo from the Chinese side before Germany would take that step. But let's see what happens in the coming weeks. If the U.S. will be pressuring other states, other countries to take that step. But Germany, I think, does not want to come out of the box antagonizing unnecessarily countries like China and Russia. They'll really be put to the test if and when Russia and China take great aggressive steps of their own to which Germany needs to respond.
Jessica, I have to ask you before we run out of time, we've got video we want to show. You tweeted about the new chancellor today being given a basket of apples inside the parliament. It is strange. Maybe we could show that video. What do you think that signifies? I mean, it's just unusual, isn't it? A basket of apples inside Parliament?
I know. I laughed out loud when I saw that. And apparently the MP who gave Chancellor Scholz the basket of apples is an independent who doesn't belong to any of the coalition parties or the traditional parties, and therefore did not give the traditional gift of a bouquet of flowers, but came with a basket of apples. So I hope there's an inside joke there, or maybe, who knows, you can find that MP and bring him or her onto the show to explain it.
It's like you tweeted, an apple a day maybe keeps the opposition away. We will see. Jessica Berlin. Jessica, it's always good to have you on. Excellent analysis tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
Germany has a new chancellor. Today, the Social Democrat Olaf Scholz took the oath of office and took the reins of power from Angela Merkel. It was a moment in which political history was written right here in Berlin. Merkel, the most powerful woman in the world, handed over all of her authority in the first transfer of power that the country has seen in 16 years. Her successor tonight promising Germany a new beginning.
Mit Ja haben gestimmt 395 Abgeordnete.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. This was the moment he's long waited for. A standing ovation in the Bundestag, where Scholz won a majority of votes from lawmakers. And when asked if he accepted their decision for him to lead a country of over 80 million people, a firm yes.
Das war laut und vernehmlich, Herr Bundeskanzler.
Then flowers and fist bumps for an occasion that doesn't happen very often. Scholz is just the 9th post-war Chancellor of Germany, and it's first in 16 years. The final key moment, the oath of office.
I swear that I will dedicate my efforts to the well-being of the German people, promote their welfare, protect them from harm, uphold and defend the basic law and the laws of the Federation, perform my duties conscientiously, and do justice to all.
That means an end to the long era of this Chancellor. Lawmakers gave Angela Merkel a standing ovation as the session started. No longer a member of Parliament, Merkel had to look on from the spectators' gallery. Just a few hours later, Merkel, with the same stoicism that marked her time in office, handed over the chancellery to Olaf Scholz.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch. Sehr geehrter Herr
Congratulations, dear
Bundeskanzler
Chancellor, dear Olaf Scholz. I know from my own experience that it is a moving occasion to be elected to this office. As you perhaps can imagine, it is an exciting, fulfilling job and a demanding one. But if you approach it with enthusiasm, then it's perhaps one of the most beautiful jobs there is, to bear responsibility for this country. I sincerely wish you good luck and every success for our country.
And while Merkel leaves the chancellery for the very last time, Olaf Scholz gets to work, holding his very first cabinet meeting as Chancellor. His government, a three-party centre-left coalition, wants to make Germany greener, fairer and more modern. But before all that, it will face its first true test: how to deal with a severe fourth wave of the coronavirus pandemic.
And on this historic day of politics here in Germany, I'm joined by our political correspondent, Leone von Hammerstein. She's been following the events today. It's good to see you, Leone. Let's talk about what we saw today. There was no real pomp and circumstance. It was, I dare say, a graceful transfer of power, but because it was so easily done, isn't this a day that calls for celebration?
Well, yes, Brent, you're right. In many ways, this was a quite German transition of power. You know, there were lots of procedural steps to follow. It was quite unglamorous, lots of paper certificates exchanged hands. I mean, we do have to remember that pandemic restrictions make huge celebrations a little bit more difficult these days. But in a way, there was a really celebratory mood in the air when Olaf Scholz was officially elected as the next German Chancellor by Parliament and then officially sworn in later. He also appointed his new cabinet. So it really was a day when it, dawned on the very last person that this era of Angela Merkel is coming to a close.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is a new chapter that Germany is writing now. What can people around the world expect in terms of foreign policy? Chancellor Scholz says he wants to work towards a new start.
Yes, exactly. In many ways, we can expect a certain sense of continuity, at least in leadership style. You know, Olaf Scholz is a very experienced negotiator, just like Angela Merkel was. He is seen to be an effective, pragmatic leader in times of crisis. And in terms of foreign policy, he is expected to set a similar emphasis on the role of a strong European Union, Germany acting within that European Union, and also on strong ties with the US, a strong transatlantic relationship. But on the other hand, it will be interesting to see in the next couple of days and weeks how Olaf Scholz will really behave towards China and Russia. Just one very current example, the US, the UK and Australia have now come out and announced that they will not send diplomatic delegations to the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing. And Olaf Scholz has left open so far whether he would join this diplomatic, what is really a diplomatic boycott over China's human rights record. So we will see, will be interesting to watch him take these very first steps as German Chancellor.
And we know that domestically the most pressing problem, the most pressing issue, of course, is the pandemic and its impact. What does Chancellor Scholz, what does he inherit from Angela Merkel?
Yeah, he inherits a pretty bad situation. Germany has been hit by the fourth wave of this pandemic really hard, with a couple of hundred people dying every day, and hospitals in some parts of the country being overwhelmed by the amount of patients that are coming in, and they have to send patients to other areas of the country because their ICUs have reached capacity. So Olaf Scholz and his new government really have to hit the ground running. First, on the top of their agenda is to convince more people in Germany to get vaccinated, as Germany has quite a low rate with 69.2% of adults here having gotten 2 jabs. So he really needs to hit the ground running and prove that he can tackle the pandemic.
That is very true. Leonie van Hammerstein reporting on what is an historic day here in Germany. Leonie, thank you.